Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to ITHive.org's live tech show for Saturday. I gotta guess, I think it's December 9th or 8th today. It's the 8th. Sorry, a little rush this morning. Um, yeah, so anyway, thanks for joining me. And of course, like always, if you're watching the recorded version of this, um, the live version and I guess also the recorded version by nature is an opportunity to ask questions in real time and get some tech advice, right? But I pick a subject every year, every week to discuss, and hopefully that prompts some more other discussion about how tech affects our lives and what role it plays in the things we need to worry about or think about or even be aware of. So episode 62 today, I thought I would take the opportunity to talk about Huawei, okay, because it's in the news, and if those haven't heard, so the number two person in Huawei, I forget her name. I'm sorry for not having that, but she was arrested in Canada on the request of the Americans for providing funds to Iran under another company that Huawei used to own. Okay, that's as far as I know, right? So, but this brings up an interesting subject about Huawei because, and in general, the thing that we should be aware of as consumers, right? Because sometimes the cheap technology or the inexpensive technology has a price, right? And I've often talked before about the fact that when let's say you getting something for free, well, what's the product? Well, the product would be you, right? But there's other avenues to this because if you get something for cheap, right, then there is also risk to you. So how does that apply to Huawei? Well, so Huawei is a huge company in China. They now are the number two, I believe, manufacturer in smartphones, right? They're doing a lot of infrastructure work around the world, right? And here's what is being said. And, I understand it from a tech perspective, and it is concerning. Now, whether it is true or not, that's yet to be seen. But the Chinese government has had a history of spying and infiltrating and stealing information from other countries, right? That's a given. We know that, right? And in the previous world, for me, I used to monitor network for my client because that was we had something facing on the outside of the internet, and I was astonished at the amount of attacks that came from places, particularly like China. Just constant threat of hacking attempts trying to get into our server, right? And so, it's concerning a little bit. So here's the thing. Here's what is being said about Huawei. Aside from the whole Iran issue, when you build computers, okay, when you build the hardware for computers, very often that hardware can contain software that is either embedded in the chips and the hardware itself, right, and can't be changed, but it can also be changed and updated, right? So here's the thing. If Huawei were to produce electronics that could have code embedded in them that could be dormant or be triggered by some other command or anything like that, all that is possible. And in our world of trying to produce things as economically and as cheaply as possible, and the consumer wanting to get the lowest price, and governments wanting to get the lower price, and all that stuff, there's risk, right? Because what if something like this gets into our technology world, right? And at a huge number, right? And then all of a sudden we find ourselves at risk where, I don't know, it could, I have no idea what risks could occur, but you could just imagine, let's say we're not playing nicely with the Chinese government one day and they get upset with us, right? And they decide to send a command to their infrastructure that they helped us build here in Canada to shut it down, right? Of course, that would be something we wouldn't expect to be in the technology that we're using, but it could be, right? And it could be hidden very well, right? And then, so suddenly you have a partner within the Chinese government through Huawei helping us build a 5G network, which is actually happening here in Canada. And then later on down the road, right, there's a diplomatic incident or whatever where we have to, apply some pressure on China or whatever because they're not playing nicely or they're violating human rights or something like that. And in return, China comes back and says, well, I'm just going to shut down your 5G network until you guys back off. All right. That's the risk, right? And then others, people, individuals themselves could be targeted, all that thing, right? So, I talk about Huawei in China, right? But this can happen through any means. So I don't want to make people paranoid here, but it's an important thing to understand about technology, right? I am personally, I think for me, we should be building our technology in Canada, right? I know it's more expensive, right? But is it worth the risk? Is it worth the risk to farm out and receive our technology from countries that do it really cheap, right? What are the costs? What risks are we putting to ourselves, right? If we build the technology here, right, then we know, right, that it's going to be okay for us and that it's not going to hurt our country, and you know what? It'll provide some jobs. Yes, the technology would be more expensive, but just as in anything else, right? Sometimes I think we get too caught up in wanting the cheapest thing, as opposed to wanting the cheapest thing, but not understanding the cost of that wanting of the cheapest thing, right? There's lots of issues around that. If you look at food, there's a good example, right? Our food supply system is broken. And why is it broken? Because we want cheap food, right? And actually broken to the point that it's not even sustainable. And I'm getting off tech topic a bit, but it's a big thing for me because so many people don't understand this. If we don't fix the food supply system, right, we're going to have food issues, and so that's an issue. It's the same with tech, though. If we don't start to be more responsible with what we buy, the companies we support, where our stuff is made, right, then we're going to have issues as well, right? So cheap comes with a price, and I've said this before on the show in different contexts, but for this show, cheap comes with a price, right? And Huawei is not a good example. It was a good example of a risk, right? You got to understand that Huawei is owned by a fellow who was a very high-ranking government official in China running the military. And if you understand anything about China, companies in China do the bidding of their political masters. So add those things up, right? And then some of those other concerns about Huawei embedding spying technology or other things that shouldn't be in their technology is very real. It makes sense, right? So, as always, I'm a big proponent of supporting companies that are going to be good in the world and not supporting companies that are going to be bad in the world. And there's a little app for that, by the way. If you get a little app called Boycott and install that on your phone, you can actually check and see the products that you're buying, and if they are supporting your beliefs or violating your beliefs, and then you can vote. You can buy products that support your and what you want in the world, and say no to the products that are going the opposite way. If we all did that, right, we would be in a far better place. So that's my thing for today. Huawei, no. Get boycott on your app, on your phone, right? And understand what you're supporting when you spend your money. Okay, that's so important. All right, so I'm going to end it here because it's like almost minus 30 out here. Yes, in Canada. That's why I'm wearing a hat today. I don't want to freeze my hands off. Well, freeze my hands off. I forgot to wear mitts and the selfie stick. I should have worn a mitt on that hand at least because it's getting cold. So anyway, it's only 15 minutes. Thank you all for taking the time to watch this. Share, leave me comments, subscribe to our channel, all those wonderful things, right? And we will see you next Saturday at 10 a.m. And once again and always, if you have a subject matter or something you want to talk about or questions or so, post them here, send them to me. We'll talk about stuff, okay? And if you need some advice or help, chime in live, 10 o'clock in the morning, Eastern, and we can talk about things. All right. We'll see you all later.